Asteroid of fear.
Welcome to another episode of the Men in the House podcast. That's right, we're doing it back to back. I hope the volume's okay. It is early. Mr. Buck is asleep, but we're doing this back to back, a Monday and a Tuesday. This is going to be a Wednesday drop. I just happen to have the time right now. It was either going to be now or this evening, so we're choosing now. Anyways, now that the Wednesday episodes, all the interviews I have are complete and have been posted, I think that I am going to begin telling my story on Wednesdays. Then I'll do a recap of the week for the Saturday episode. What do I mean by my story? Well, I think it's kind of my story of showing how the hell I ended up here, seeing what people can resonate with and take away. So, here we go. Let's kick it off. My story, let's see, let me get a little drink of coffee here. Hmm. Well, let's see, my story begins in a small town in Texas where I was born. But before I was born, I almost didn't make it out of the womb 3 times. And when I finally did arrive, I was only, I think, 3 pounds, 11 ounces. I remember my father saying how I could fit in his hand, in the palm of his hand. I was so small. And to put it into perspective, I think I have some pictures of me on top of like a Raggedy Ann, Raggedy Andy type pillow, the little square ones that go on the couch. And I didn't even take up a whole one of those. And subsequently, from being 3 pounds, 11 ounces, and the reason I almost didn't come out of the womb 3 times is because I was very underdeveloped. My lungs were underdeveloped. This caused me to spend a lot of time in the hospital because I had breathing problems. This was the late 70s, mid to late 70s. So all the medications, all the treatments that we have now were not available. It was a little more old school. But yeah, I'm sure I spent some time in the NICU waiting to get out. Um, but I was born at a little hospital that my mom worked for probably 35 years. It was the same organization I worked at before I got laid off in 2020, and I had also worked there in the early 2000s. But yeah, I was born there, and then from there, I think my dad was in the army, and so I don't know if I ever lived in Killeen. Maybe not. But I know at some point they moved to Pasadena over by Houston because I think my dad was welding at the time. And I don't know how long we lived there, but what I do remember, which is kind of a pivotal point in life, I don't remember it per se, but I've been told I was 1 year old, and I got burned very badly as a child down the back of both my legs, kind of underneath my butt cheeks, all the way down to my ankles on the back of my legs. And I was only told what happened. I was too young to remember, thankfully, because I'm certain it was painful. But apparently, I was at a babysitter's and she put me in a tub of hot water sitting down. So imagine a 1 year old sitting down in the tub. And supposedly she went to answer the phone. It was back in the day of landlines, probably once in her phone in the living room and or the family area, as well as maybe one phone in your bedroom. And whoever else she was babysitting when she went to answer the phone, there must have been some chemicals, bleach or ammonia or something, um, next to the tub or in the bathroom. And whoever else she was babysitting ended up pouring chemicals into the hot water. So I ended up with chemical burns. That led to me spending several months in Shriner's burn unit in Galveston, Texas. I was in one of those little boxes, probably for 1 to 3 months, and my parents couldn't touch me except through the box. And they used to drive every day from Pasadena to Galveston, so probably about an hour every day to see me. But I'm guessing probably one of the reasons that I enjoy the sound of the ocean has to do with maybe a memory that was implanted in there when I was in the burn unit, meaning that the sound of the ocean is very soothing to me. That's what I use on a sound machine, or sometimes I'll put it on, like Amazon has a black screen, ocean waves for 9 hours. I'll put that on when I go to sleep. It's very soothing to me. Probably one of the other reasons that hearing crying babies is like somebody sticking an ice pick in my brain. It's very difficult for me. I suspect it was due to probably hearing other crying babies in the ICU, the burn unit, whoever else was there in pain. But they say a lot of kids that experience trauma, it follows them throughout their life. And I'm probably certain that this did somehow, some way. And I don't know that I would want to know, but you know, you do hear like I listen to a lot of podcasts with veterans and stuff like the Sean Ryan show and um, countless other shows where people have used psychedelics to heal certain things. And I want to say they talk about ibogaine maybe, and that you relive some of your most difficult parts in your life. I've often wondered if I took that route because I'm kind of anti big pharma. Um, if reliving that is something that would take place, and how difficult it would be, or would it be a matter of being transported back there and actually learning the truth? Because I only know what I've been told. And if nobody was there, if my mom and dad weren't there, then they only know what they've been told. Yeah, I'm sure that that followed me around somehow, some way. So outside of being burned, having underdeveloped lungs, having asthma, it led to a very kind of sickly childhood, almost not making it out of the womb, turning around at 1, having this happen, and having to spend all that time. And then apparently, if anyone knows anything about Pasadena, Texas, it is, I want to say it's where they have a lot of shipping and oil and different things like that, and you can smell it. And it was bad for my lungs. And I want to say a doctor told them, hey, you're going to have to leave here, otherwise, he's not going to make it. And I guess we proceeded to pack up and move back to where I'm from, where family was, where my mom and dad both grew up. Even though they never knew each other in high school, I guess my mom was in nursing school and my aunt was in nursing school. They're like LVNs, licensed vocational nurses, and they were roommates. And my dad was in the army, stationed in Killeen, and had come back and visited his sister and met my mom, and here we are. So yeah, I'm guessing that they moved back for me. And I think they lived in different places, not just here, but in the surrounding areas, probably depending on where my dad's work was. But we eventually settled in a super small town, maybe like 400 people. And let's see, I went to preschool somewhere else, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. That I remember. Grandparents. My grandfather worked for the city, and my grandmother was stay at home, and she did some restaurant jobs here and there. Then I also had we had family friends who used to babysit me as a child, trying to take back to my first memories. Um, yeah, a very sick child, always going to the doctor, always sick, always missing school, having to take medicine, prescriptions from a very young age. And, like I said, the treatments were very different then, but, it kind of became a normal part of my routine. Doctor's visits, taking medicine, which is very interesting because, my daughter, my 10-year-old, does not like to take medicine at all. It's very difficult for her, even if she knows it'll make her better. Which is hard for me to understand because by the time I was her age, I had been taking daily medicine for years. It seemed like probably since the time I was 7 or 8. But yeah, I think I have a few preschool memories, kinder care memories, um, before heading off into kindergarten. I don't remember too much about kindergarten, other than maybe, or it might have been a different grade. We were reading all that. Yeah, it couldn't have been kindergarten because we were reading. It's probably fourth grade. I don't remember kindergarten too much. We have a few pictures. Um, Me in a little Bluebirds outfit. That's the one before you go into Cub Scouts. But I do know I was always interested in music and martial arts, according to those who watched me as a child. I guess every time Elvis or somebody would come on, I would be playing air guitar or maybe pick up a broom, play guitar, and then always watching Bruce Lee movies. But yeah, but this shaped a lot of, if you've heard my episodes, probably my attitude or my outlook in terms of being much smaller than everyone else as a preemie. And then with everything that happened to me, I'm sure my parents were very watchful, protective over me, and especially my mom, which led to kind of what they allowed me to participate in, but also my attitude as it relates to, hey, I was always told what I couldn't do versus what I could do. And it was always up to me to convince both myself and others that I was capable, that I was no different, even though I was. I mean, as a little kid, even as an adult, you want to fit in. And it's hard to be different. People look at you different, people treat you different, probably especially when you're a sick child. Yeah, those first few years, I don't remember too much. Um, a few memories that pop up. I remember being in the pool at kinder care. Could have possibly shit in the pool. I don't know. I remember them evacuating the pool because there was a dirt floating. Um, yeah, I remember waiting for my mom or somebody to pick me up at preschool. I remember sitting outside on the concrete. I remember on the way to the preschool, um, there was a guy who used to sit in the front yard. It was over by my grandmother's house, and he had a snake that he was always like messing with, sitting in the front yard because all the kids would walk by. I assume it was just to get attention or, you know, show his weirdness, his differentness, uniqueness. Um, that I remember. Yeah, I was raised by a lot of women due to that. It's always under the care of women, watching over me, telling me, you can't do this, you can't do that. I was very much an inside kid because I was very sick. And then let's see, first grade, probably I remember talked about my best friend who designed the logo behind me, you see on the screen. We sat next to each other in first grade, so that's where we met. So 6 years old, we're both 48, 42 years. And then I remember second grade, and that was probably the first trauma I remember. Um, Not trauma to myself, but I didn't understand it at the time, but I'm sure it shapes something within my brain. And that was there was a little girl who sat in front of me in class. Her name was Dana Hobbs. We were 7, and we lived like in these neighborhoods that were kind of across from each other, I think, but she would get dropped off somewhere else, like almost at a convenience store on the bus. Things were very different. And this particular day, I don't know what happened, but the bus failed, went out of gear, something. But as she was crossing the road, when the bus came out of gear, it hit her. And I was on the bus. There were several of us on the bus. So all of a sudden, we were in a bus that ran over the little girl who sat in front of me, Dana Hobbs. So the next day when you go to school and you sit down and the desk in front of you is empty, you know exactly why, even if everyone else doesn't know. But being in a small town, I'm sure everybody knew. Don't really remember what my thoughts were on it at the time. Probably surreal. 7, very resilient. Yeah, I don't think I put together at that time, you know, how fast life can change, but it did. Let me see, what do I remember about the third grade? I remember times tables. That's what I remember. I remember memorizing times tables. I remember talent shows in Miss Barron's class. That's where that music kind of comes back into play. I can remember me, Andrew, and another guy, Jeffrey Tanner, um, singing the Stray Cats, Rev It Up and Go, in front of the class. Little three piece like the Stray Cats. Speaking of which, that's how we'll get in. That's what it was when I was 6. The other thing that happened in my life was one, I got a three-wheeler. Also music, martial arts, and motorcycles. I forgot about that. Yeah, I got my first three-wheeler at 6. Um, that was something my dad had done. He had ridden motorcycles, and guess I liked it. Maybe he liked it. I don't remember ever asking for one or how it came about, but that was kind of a theme that's gone on through my life too, is motorcycles. And yeah, I don't remember asking for it, but I got one. We ride quite a bit. Uh, and Jeffrey Tanner at that time lived not too far, so I remember like him being on the back, us going around. I had a little like dirt track in the yard. But yeah, that's when I started my motorcycle journey. And then also when I was 6, I got my first little silver kind of looking boom box with a tape deck in the center. Just a little one piece handheld, the retractable antenna, figure circa 1982, 83. And I got Huey Lewis in the News and the Stray Cats. My dad used to like the Stray Cats strut. So those are the first two albums I got. I started listening to music. I want to say by the time I was 7, I found some of my parents' old cassettes. Shout out if you remember cassettes. They had like ZZ Top, El Loco, um, maybe a few others. So yeah, I started off on kind of that rockabilly pop music. You listen to the news, yeah, that was the 80s. And getting into classic rock like ZZ Top, maybe Foghat. So yeah, from a very young age, I was into the tunes, especially being an inside kid because I didn't get to go out as much, maybe except to ride the three-wheeler. Um, so being inside, being an only child, spent a lot of time alone, and music was one of those ways that I passed the time. And also during this time, I can remember kind of wanting a brother or sister, and some of my friends, both Andrew and Jeffrey, had brothers, Ronald and Robbie. And during this time, over the years, between I was probably 6 and 10, I think my mom lost 2 children after me. Maybe one was a stillbirth. So yeah, I was the only one that made it out. But yeah, circling back around to that traumatic event. And what did I say? Times tables. It's probably during this time that martial arts and different things start coming into play. I cannot remember if I was 8 or 9 when I started playing Little League football. That was a big deal because having had asthma, my mom really, and being a little person, but of course, when you're like 8, 9 years old, some kids are bigger. You can definitely pick out the linemen who are drinking chocolate milk, and the secondary and other people, running backs and quarterbacks. Receivers are drinking white milk at lunch. So me and John Huddleston used to always say, the future linemen of America, you can tell them because they're drinking chocolate milk at the table. Shout out to John. I want to say he sat behind me. Dana Hobbs sat in front of me, and I think John Huddleston sat behind me. He and I were the two half Mexicans that made up the one Mexican outside of the Madranos. Mhm. I don't know how me with a last name of C got paired in between two H's, Hobbs and Huddleston, but that's besides the point. Yeah, getting to play football was kind of like that proof of, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, everyone, hey, me, you can do this. Because I knew, my dad was a Golden Gloves boxer and he boxed in the Army. I think he won 96 and lost 11 at about 119 pounds. And I want to say I was aware of this because I'd seen all the ribbons and I was always interested in martial arts. And I want to say by that time, my dad had probably explained to me that you're smaller than everyone. People are going to test you, just like they did him. You're going to have to learn to fight all these different things. You got to be meaner than everyone else. You got to be stronger. Um, Almost like you have to prove to more people everything. So, playing football was that chance to prove, you know, to my mom, like I got this, to start implementing some of the lessons my dad was talking about and kind of testing yourself. Because I think every man, that's why men probably enjoy like combat sports. For some men go in the military, it's the ultimate test, man against man. Um, but also against yourself, proving to yourself that you can get through it when everybody else thinks you can't, and that you're going to be small, but hey, I can hit hard, whether that be on the football field or in the gym. But yeah, I was on par for growth with everyone else, so I ended up being a running back. I think I scored 7 touchdowns my first year, and only a few the second year. Um, but yeah, I did have this one funny moment. It's on videotape. We used to always say we would consider sending it into America's Funniest Home Videos, and that was I go to catch a kickoff and it hits me square in the helmet and bounces off, and the other team recovers it. Super embarrassing. It's on VHS somewhere. Yeah, highlight reel of embarrassing moment on tape. But oh well. I learned a lot, and I can remember during this time coming back from football practice. That's when gummy worms came out. They used to come in this big container, and you used to get these little paper sleeves and these little plastic tongs, and you reach in there and grab how many ever gummy worms you want. And I can't remember if they were a penny or 5 cents or what they were a piece. Maybe get five for a quarter. So yeah, that's one of the notable things I remember. But I want to say it was about 9, maybe my second year in football. Convinced my parents to let me start taking martial arts. I remember my first instructor, his name was Benny Broadway, which was funny because the martial arts studio was located on Broadway Avenue in the French Quarter. Yeah, and he was from France. Uh, how funny is that? Coincidental? I don't know. But yeah, I think it was my second year of football, first year of martial arts. I think it was 9. And, that was a whole other thing of taking that love, that passion, like, can I really do it? My dad having been a boxer in martial arts and been in a lot of fights, and I'm sure my mom had to deal with him a bunch of coming home jacked up because I know I've seen it before. Yeah, so I'm sure she didn't want that, but she let me do so. And that started my martial arts journey. Started off taking Taekwondo. Then we'll kind of go like ages 9 through 12-ish, maybe. Um, yeah, this was in the 80s, so Taekwondo, a few things. We didn't have like Muay Thai, we didn't have Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It wasn't until I was maybe 17, 18, or maybe 16 that I found a couple of guys that studied Japanese Jiu Jitsu. Yeah, so that was all that was available in boxing. So yeah, I started off in Taekwondo, and yeah, well, you have the katas and there's some exhibition. I mean, you do learn some basics, striking, how to hold your body, kicking, your hips, all that stuff. I did end up getting a black belt by the time I was 12, maybe 11. I don't know. It was 3 or 4 years. But yeah, being smaller was kind of something I knew I wanted to learn, had to learn, but also enjoyed it because I've been fascinated with Bruce Lee and stuff since I was a little kid. But it was also that proof of going, hey, that ages between 9 and 12. And then, of course, 12 and 14, which we'll get into, is when you're a small person, you stop growing quickly and everybody kind of shoots by you. But yeah, some of my favorite times during these moments were going to martial arts tournaments. There was a lot in Texarkana and Little Rock, Arkansas. And so some weekends we'd go compete in a tournament, and then we would uh, go over to Hot Springs and just chill out. And we would actually vacation in Arkansas. I remember my mom had the old little square Bronco, and yeah, I would go to Hot Springs, Little Rock, went to some alligator farms. I remember one time staying on an A-frame in a river, on the river. That was really cool. Yeah, Arkansas is pretty beautiful, even if the Clintons and Walmart are from there. Um, but yeah, those were some good times, family time, all three of us together, traveling to these tournaments. Uh, I did win second in the Grand Nationals, first in regionals, and second in regionals during my time as a martial artist. So, a few accolades. Also, that during some of these years, I was able to, um, they had demonstrations and stuff, and they'd come out to school. I remember performing in the high school auditorium, cafeteria, stage area. Um, where I took off and jumped over two or three people and broke some boards. Yeah, fun times. But this gave me an advantage of people knew I was in martial arts, so people didn't mess with me too much. Although I did get in one fight. I remember, I think it was seven. Me and Doyle Rowe. He punched me in the mouth, busted my lip. That's all I remember. And then we got licks. Yeah, back when corporal punishment was still the go-to in schools with a paddle. Mr. Coffee was his name. That was the principal. But yeah, but I would say it gave me a leg up because people knew I trained, and um, so even though I was small, people didn't really test me too much. But yeah, those years were filled with playing Little League football, taking martial arts, pursuing my black belt, and one of the things I can remember most too is in fifth grade. One of our teachers, now I look back, I think she was a hippie because after summer vacation, she come back and had one of those slide projectors and showed us a bunch of pictures of what she did over the summer. And her husband had taken a VW bus like up through the redwoods and showed us like driving through some of the redwood trees. And now I'm suspecting, yeah, Miss Stripling was a hippie. But what I also remember about the fifth grade is studying the planetary system. That was fun, getting to learn about Uranus. No pun intended, just joking. But yeah, doing projects like that where you bake the clay and make the whole solar system. That was a lot of fun. I remember at that time, um, when we talk about connections, one guy I was kind of friends with and lost touch with was John Lofton. I think he's since passed, but interestingly enough, he went on, I think, to be a Marine aviator, flying in AE-6Bs. And I was in a squadron in the Navy, not as a pilot, as a yeoman, an AE-6B squadron. Because I know Hunter from Podcast Connection Network, everything's connected. That's where that kind of comes from. You look back at all these things and you realize, oh, everything is connected. Yeah, those were kind of some formidable memories during that time. And what those years were filled with. I do not remember much about sixth and seventh grade, which is till about 12 when I got my black belt, other than I remember I probably got my first guitar then. It was like a hot pink reverse head, because this was probably about the time that oh yeah, that's what happened. We'll get back on the music tip. I think when I was 9, I got one of those stereos that had the detachable speakers, dual tape decks, and record player on top. But going back a couple on the music tip was I can remember staying up and listening, or getting up on Sunday mornings and listening to Casey Kasem's Top 40, and you put the blank tape in and hit record and pause, and I'd wait for like my songs to come on so I could record them. I always remember waiting to hear Wooly Bully. I used to love that song. You hear it up in Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke, I believe. But yeah, I remember being very young, and then at 9, I got the dual tape deck and all that, and that kind of leads into at that time I was listening to probably like Metallica, Testament, some heavy metal. But then my parents had this big ass record collection with Foghat, a bunch of stuff from the 50s and 60s and 70s. And because every time I would miss school, when I would get sick with like a lung flare up, I'd be out for like 2 weeks. So yeah, a lot of listening to music, being inside. when I wasn't playing football, doing martial arts, and then of course got my first guitar somewhere in there. And I remember taking lessons, learning how to. I think I remember trying to learn a Metallica song. This was back in the day of Headbangers Ball, and me and friends would stay up on Saturdays and watch Headbangers Ball when we would have a sleepover. It's also during that time I remember at this guy's house who had a guitar kind of like mine, because we took martial arts together. Lonnie Miles, shout out if you're out there. But I remember he introduced me to top ramen. It's like, you've never had ramen? I'm like, no. Yeah, at his house. So yeah, lots of things. Talk about the trauma of my youth, what probably makes me the way I am, and my brain being sick, having to prove to everybody it's a smaller, sickly person that I can do everything you think I can't, but also prove to myself that I had what it took. Because when people tell you that, you can either choose to believe them or choose to prove them wrong. And I always chose to prove them wrong. Yeah, my loves of music, martial arts, and whatever the third M, can't remember. But yeah, taking martial arts, getting my black belt, winning some tournaments, proving to myself the trauma of Dana Hobbs. Probably also started skateboarding in those years. You know, this was in the time of Power Peralta, Tony Hawk. Yeah, somewhere in there, picked up skateboards too because it was the 80s. So yeah, you could imagine. My first board was a Mike McGill, blue turquoise with like red, the skull and the snake. So there was all kinds of stuff going on. Man, it was the 80s. It was great. Fist fights on the playground, getting licks from the principal, future lineman of America with chocolate milk. Man, wall ball, ramen, headbangers ball. A lot of great times. A lot of fun. Well, I think that's all we're going to get for today. Maybe I'll break down the middle school years next episode. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you can begin to understand a little bit more about me. I don't know if it was an ordinary beginning, but it was a beginning nonetheless. I don't think ordinary, given everything I had to overcome, but I'm still here, and I'm going to take you along this journey and break it down where my beliefs and all my things come from. So, until then, go out and be the person that you want to meet.
Asteroid of fear.